on The Locker Room. Welcome to Tuesday night. It's going to be a rock show extraordinaire. Dougie HODGSON, JFOT, special guest John Markovski. I'm breathless. Join us after the break. And welcome back to The Locker Room on this glorious Tuesday night. You're asking yourself right now, is Greg Blake starstruck? Well, bloody hell yes I am, because we've only ever had, for those of us that have followed the Locker Room journey, and we thank you so much for your support, both with this program on Channel 31 and also on the Facebook page. We were actually doing internet stuff, you know, interwebbing or whatever the hell they call it these days. Way back before we got the gig on Channel 31, we had a very special guest. He's returned tonight. I am so thrilled. He was a star at 15. He's a superstar now. He's a lovely man. And he is with us again tonight, the great John Markovski. Jonesy, welcome back to The Locker Room.
My pleasure, Blakey.
Isn't it, though? And, of course, my inimitable friend, my co-pilot, the Batman to my Robin, or the other way around, Dougie HODGSON. Doug, welcome.
Good to see you, Blake. How are you, Jonesy? Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you
Good
too,
to see you, mate. Now, he had a go at me for not shaving when I first came on. I know you've been working hard today, which is a good point, but, mate, what a show we've got here, though, Blakey. We've got a legend here that's made.
And he really is. And we'll talk about the John, but we've got to actually thank John as well, because he did make the point when he came in, when he strode in, when his sexual ambience strode into the room tonight, and there really is the stench of greatness about him. But that hyperbole aside, we've got to thank him, because we are now streaming out on Channel 31 or whatever the hell you do to nearly 30,000 people, and that's extraordinary, and it's all because of your guest appearance on the webcast, Jonesy.
My pleasure helping out if I can, Blakey. Hopefully it boosts up to 100,000.
Now, last week, our special guest was Chris Taylor, a former teammate of yours at George Cross, and
he didn't put the knives in, Blake.
He nominated you as one of the best three or four players that he saw, and we're also reflecting on the fact that, for those of you that don't know, John Markovski was a star in the NSL when the NSL was probably at the top of its game. He was a superstar at 15 years of age, which is extraordinary.
Can I just butt in here? 380 National League games. Started your career at 15, 110 goals, mate. You know, where were you before the National League, just before in your juniors? Where'd you come through?
Started off at Sunshine Heights and then moved to Sunshine City, and then we merged with George Cross, and it was called obviously Sunshine George Cross, and got through the seniors.
What I'm fascinated about, because I literally don't remember my teenage years for a variety of reasons. Thank you, Victoria Police.
We'll go there later.
But it really fascinates me now, because you've got that perspicacity and maturity, and you've got a couple of boys of your own. But you look back now, do you even recall how it felt to be on a national stage and performing the sort of deeds that you did at such a tender age? Can you actually reflect back at what it was like?
I can, Blakey. I was fortunate to start off at a young age. I did have a break, from John Gardner and Jimmy Rooney were the coaches then at George Cross, and I was one of the lucky ones to be given a chance, and obviously I did grab it at a young age. He nursed me in, slowly, and Chris Taylor, as you mentioned beforehand, was one of those players that was part of that team. And I do remember most of my games, Blakey.
Really?
From 15 probably all the way till now.
And does it strike you now, did you keep scrapbooks of things like that? Because I still remember now, I remember a great colleague of mine, Laurie Schwab, you'd remember Schwabby very well, and a gorgeous man, and we missed him terribly. And I remember Schwabby because I was under his tutelage at the time, and he had a much greater perspective on stars of years gone by, and he used to speak of you in such glowing terms. What was it like to be that age? Seriously, that age? You weren't even allowed to have sex at that age, John. And God knows, that's a whole other subject. And yet here you are featuring back page of the Age.
As a scrapbook, my mum did keep a lot of clippings when I first started, yeah. And
they're good like that, mums, aren't they?
yeah. Well, there was a scrapbook there, but yeah, there was a little bit of a media there, but I just kept on doing what I needed to do.
And you were still at school at the time, presumably. Yes. How was that with your peer group at school?
Yeah, it was all right. I mean, when you're playing National League, and you know, not only that, our school soccer team did okay as well.
I'm tipping and banging
which wasn't too bad. Yeah, school was always number one, and you know, football was obviously number two. It's something that I enjoyed, and you know, and made a living out of it.
Now, speaking of making a living, you were, to all intents and purposes, a club hopper. You hopped clubs more than any player that I can recall.
All clubs and Gregory Norman.
And Dougie, I know you've got the rundown. You have become stats guy. Jonesy's career went from, now, as I recall, the start of the club hopping was from Sunshine George Cross to Preston?
Yep, correct.
And then from there on, go on, Dougie, give me a run
Melbourne
through.
Knights, we've got a Marconi, a Preston, Morwell, Altona, Morwell. I can't imagine this is the brain going here. I've just got to look down and make sure we're okay. Melbourne Knights, we've got a Canberra in there, we've got a Carlton, a Perth Glory, Carlton. And Football Kings are in there as well.
Now, did they get over you that quickly, or did you get over them that quickly?
It's great being wanted, isn't it?
I have to admit though, Blake, and I mean this sincerely, mate, NSL Under-21 Player of the Year at the age of 17. I remember as a kid and actually watching TV about this gentleman. And by the way, this is about the closest I ever got to him when I was marking Jonesy, to be fair. I'm going to get him now. I've got him marked. Mate, I watched it. It was TV, and I said to you before the show, I thought, I swear it was Marconi. I've watched a 17-year-old banging a left foot from 25, and that was Jonesy. You know, to go back into field, how did you go in the balance, like Blakey's just saying in there with the players, being a young, did anyone put their arm around you and develop in that way?
Not only coaches like John Gardner and Jimmy Rooney, obviously, you know, the senior players took me in and they taught me a lot.
Yep.
Not only in the football aspect, but also to try and protect myself and do what I need in the game sense.
So anyone particular that stand out, that really put their arm around you, took under your wing?
Oh, look, there was that many there at George Cross, you know, Carl Gilder, you had Noel Mitten, Roger Bain, Jeff Faulkner, you know, great bunch of blokes, and they taught me a lot.
Now, this is going to be possibly the most frustrating episode because John Markovski's career was extensive. We've only got limited time. We are going to come back after the break and we are going to pound you like you've never been pounded before, Jonesy. And I say that in the most appropriate way. We're on The Locker Room. It is Tuesday night. It is our second to last show of the season. We'll see you in a minute. You're back on The Locker Room. It's a Tuesday night. Thanks to all our friends out there on our Facebook page and everything else. And actually thanks to our friends as well here at the Springthorpe Country Club, where we're really well looked after in the VIP room. If you're in the mood to do something, do it here. John Markovski's our that was going nowhere and it ended nowhere. John, thanks again for joining us. Look, we could actually sit here and have 2 hours of John Markovski love in. We can't do that, but one of the things that we love to do with our special guests is talk about best players that you played with and played against, but more importantly, your career, you know, touched on so many great moments. Give us one where you look back now, reclining back into near middle age, and you think, hell, if I could have that moment back again right now, what would the moment be, do you think?
I don't know, Blakey. That moment, obviously football at the moment is totally different to when it was back in our day, but I wouldn't know, mate.
Wouldn't change much?
Wouldn't. No, I wouldn't.
No.
All right, best players you played for and against. And you can't be ambivalent. Commit yourself, Jonesy.
In Australia?
30,000 people are listening, yes.
In Australia?
Go Aussie first.
Paul Trimboli.
Yep.
Probably one of the best players I've played with.
Ambassador of the game.
Yeah, against, besides Dougie Hodgson, trying to mark me and kicking me around.
So it's the
Don't you know who I
it's
am?
the closest I've got to him. You got that on camera? I've got him. For a second, I've got him.
Look, there was plenty of players that you know you play against that are quality, and also with. It's hard to mention, like you said, you haven't got enough time, but most of the players that I played with have been quality, yeah.
So the players you played with, though, you got Bosnich, you know, you're talking Gibson, you got Slifkus, you got Murphy, Millen. These boys have, you know, a lot of them they've gone overseas. They're Zalek, Corica, Vidmar. You know, that was probably Olympics 1919. Quote me here. 91 was the Olympics or 92?
92.
92 Barcelona.
Yeah.
New Camp.
Yeah.
How many people watching?
It was a fair few.
Fair few.
Yeah.
New Camp holds about 110,000, I think, there.
Yeah.
What was it like playing at New Camp for Australia and representing the country?
Oh, look, it was amazing, just the whole setup there. The stadium, and when you come out, the change rooms were massive. You know, the recovery room was unbelievable, but the surface was to die for. It was carpet, and if you can't play on that surface, I don't think you can play anywhere. But it was great playing at New Camp, and having that as our home ground was one of the highlights, Blakey, like you said, playing there in the Olympics on one of the best grounds in the world. It was excellent, yeah.
And your career since then, I mean, we've talked about that extensive career hopping as a player. Where's the journey taken you since you gave it all? And when did you give it away and why?
I think I retired at 2002, and I think I just thought it was time to hold off and have a break. I mean, from 15 to 32 is a long amount of years to play in the National League. So.
Is that 17 years?
Go away.
We're with you. Congratulations on there, Blakey. Just making sure we're keeping everyone awake.
There's one defining moment, ladies and gentlemen. Record the date.
Tell me something though, Jamesy. Was there because back in the UK, the ideal for moving clubs, if you know the lower divisions, the more clubs you move, the more money you made. Because you used to get a sign-on fee over the UK. Was there such thing as sign-on fees back then?
There was.
There was?
Back then,
because I actually got a Mars bar and a can of Coke when I left after and went to Heidelberg. So about as well. There was sign-on fees back in there?
There was back then,
yeah. So probably the best move, what would you, looking back, what would have been the most memorable move, would you say?
Oh, look, obviously the most memorable in my view is George Cross starting off. Marconi was a great club down in Sydney. Got treated well. I was there for a couple of years, and Perth Glory was a great year over there as well. So
scored many goals, my friend. Give me one that really still stuck in the back of the head.
And it must be said too, just to give you some think time. Again, if you can YouTube these things, if you've got old DVDs or videos, pull them out, because this guy, without being in any way condescending, John Markovski was a legend, a superstar of the game, and he was one of those players, Dougie Hodgson, that even when you were playing against him, he would do things, and he did it when I was in the commentary.
He was a strong machine.
It left you friggin' breathless. If you don't Google him, then you've got something other than ice in your veins. Best goal?
Probably, I think it was back in 1989 against Footscray JST at their ground, and it was a very hot day, and I won the ball in the middle of the park, and I probably took about 3 or 4 steps, and I hit it from about 40, and it went in, only because it was hot.
In the pigeon?
Yeah, pretty much.
Took the spiders out of the corner?
Might have.
Might have,
yeah.
Is that right? Can you tell me can you remember what the score was at the time then, Josie?
2-1, I think we ended up winning.
And was that the winner? Just say it was anyway, doesn't matter. That was the winner. Straight in the pigeonhole, knock the spiders off there, mate.
And look, again, just talking about life now, and I know that you've got a couple of young fellas as well. Are they aware of how prominent you were as a sports person in this country? Is that something that, do you pound them do you sit down with them every night and say, come here and watch your old man on video?
No, I don't. I mean, they are aware, obviously, on what I've done in the past.
They can YouTube you, obviously.
They can, and they have. And, I mean, they're in the game themselves, so we'll just have to see what happens with their career.
You got 2 boys there, Jonesy. The age of the boys at the moment, mate? 16
and 14.
And showing a little bit of potential?
Yeah, a little bit.
Without putting pressure on them, they're okay.
A little bit of potential.
Better still, do they love the game?
They enjoy the game so much.
Which is the main thing. Now, talking about loving the game, under 18s, Box Hill. You're involved in the game still at the moment, coaching, which is fantastic. Yep. Keeping someone like yourself with the knowledge you have still in the game.
Yeah. I just finished now. I was taking Box Hill under 18s, and obviously there to do a job and maybe develop some young kids. 15, 16-year-old kids moving up, and a few of them made the seniors, a couple of appearances, which was great. You're having the younger kids there, and hopefully they can excel to that and maybe play regular football in the senior squad.
So for yourself, coach, and I know it's funny looking at yourselves as coaches now, because development's not about actually winning. It's actually seeing them progress. You get more satisfaction as a coach, seeing their progress. And there, where can you see you progress to the next stage of your... I know you're in the under-18s. Now listen, and this is not me having a swipe, but I will have. You played for Australia. Is your chance of Jonesy might ambitions to be in the A-League?
Oh, look, I mean, obviously coaching's something that I'm looking at the moment. And, yeah, the A-League would be great to get involved. And, you know, even if it's the youth team, to start off with, and then just see where it comes from there. And it would be great to coach in the A-League for a Melbourne team, yeah.
Lots more to come on the Locker Room on this Tuesday night, second to last show. We may have a second season, we may not. But again, thanks for all your support along the journey. The journey is where I was going with that. It ended awkwardly, but smooth segue to the break. We'll be back. We've got JFOT, we've got all the news. John Markovski, our special guest. Welcome back to the Locker Room. It's Tuesday night, our second to last program of the year. We were a little bit sad about that, but I hope you agree it's been a lot of fun along the journey. And don't forget, we're still on Len McKendry watch. If you see Len McKendry in your backyard, if you spy him juggling in the City Mall, we need to know. We want Len McKendry. We've got him in our spotlights. Don't forget, of course, our special segment, Dougie's Shirt, coming up. Our special guest is John Markovski, but now it's over to the inimitable, and we say a welcome to Knackers JFOT.
Thanks, Blakey, and thanks, Dougie, and great to be here with Jonesy. I mean, special guest and legend of the game. But Jonesy, you mentioned Johnny Gardner before. Who are some of the other great coaches that had an influence on your career, both as a player and possibly as a coach as well?
Oh, I had plenty. Bertie Mariani, I had down at Marconi. Bern Stanger, Perth Glory. Terry Venables with the Australian team. He was great to work under.
How was Venables, Jonesy, when you're very professional, obviously coming from the UK and obviously in Europe, and what was he like, his sort of character?
Oh, his character was, when it comes to business, he wants the business done. But just his knowledge of the game was, great. Well, for me and obviously for the rest of the guys. And it was great to have him here as the Aussie coach. Yeah,
and it was just a whisker away from getting us to the World Cup at the MCG that night, that fateful night back in the early 90s. So, but I was going to ask you, what's your sort of opinion of the state of the game today? I mean, we're having a lot of this sort of toing and froing with the NPL in Victoria, and the FFV's trying to implement that, and now they're not, and all these things. So where do you see that sort of heading at the moment? Because it seems to be a bit of a dog's breakfast at the moment.
I think it was rushed, and I personally think back in my day when I played in the junior level, we did have the Super League. So obviously you're playing the best against the best. This new league they're trying to set up would be good, but you need to get the best clubs in that league.
Yeah.
And most of them obviously are in the Premier League and the First Division that have been around for a long, long time, 70, 80 years or whatever it is. And, the kids need the best kids playing against the best kids.
It's funny though, because what the FFV and looking at the criteria, they're actually making clubs accountable for their actions and they're putting strategies and structure in place. And let's be fair, the game needs it. The game's needs it. So what they're doing is right where I think the clubs are breaking down. This is just an outsider looking in. They're basically saying, well, we're going to lose what we were. Heidelberg, Preston. That's our club. They're big clubs as we know. Juventus. Well,
Melbourne Knights are one of the first to actually roll up against it. Yeah.
So what they're going to basically, realistically, if they go and do what they want to do, is basically they're going to become non-clubs because it's going to be districts and zones, which is if you go back to our days when we were playing, Jonesy, it was the regionals.
Yes.
So what they're trying to do is actually make regionals but into a league and make it accountable. So I can see where they're coming from, but how do you make and try and get... No, I don't know the answer. How do we make that and get involved with the clubs to be part of that? That's what the clubs are on tipping up trying to do.
They're pretty much rolling in. So from my reading of the situation, it's pretty much FFV on one side and the clubs, 64 clubs on the other side, and sort of they're not seeming to meet in the middle. So
what happens to them clubs? That's what we're saying, Jane. What happens to them clubs if it becomes regionals?
Look, it's a good thing, but they did have it back in our days, having the best against the best, and we did travel all around Victoria. There's no use Melbourne Knights going under 15s or 16s or whatever it is, travelling to Shepparton and knocking them off 12-0.
Yeah. Doesn't serve the purpose.
Well, it doesn't, because there's no development for Melbourne Knights players or the Shepparton players.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to structure somehow a good league to play for the 10, 11 months or whatever they want. If it's local, well, it's going to be local, because that's where the talent and the better players are.
Have you got any answers up the sleeve there, Jonesy, you think that could work, the balance? Anything people are talking in the traps?
I don't think the balance will work if you go all the way around regional. If you go to Shepparton, Geelong, you might get a strong team, because it's obviously the population's a little bit more, but they're going to have to figure it out. And the way they've run it at the moment, I think it's all rushed, and they haven't sat down with all the clubs to obviously, set it up properly.
Well, it's certainly going to be interesting times ahead, because from what I gather, next year is not going to go ahead according to the FFV. So it's sort of as we said last week with the CT, yeah.
So we go to my shirt. This one's a little special one, Jonesy, the Arsenal.
Yeah.
This one, the story behind this one was 45,000 people at Highbury. Came on the last 25 minutes playing. There was like Burkamp and Adams and Seaman playing in there. And coming on, and basically after the game, it was one of the highlights of my career. After the game, the bloke, Salvation Army hat, and comes in, and there's all marble floor at Arsenal at Highbury, and he comes in, he says, HODGSON. I said, yeah. And I've came out to the door with my towel, and there's a man you mentioned before, someone here to see, and I'm thinking, who's coming to see me? There's Cole Gilder. Dougie, how are you? In you come, champ. And he's in there. He never heard the team radio. He says, coming off at Sheffield United, it's Dougie Hodge. He said, that's me, mate. So Cole ended up going up to the players' lounge with Bald and Adams and everything, because he's an Arsenal supporter. So there's a little bit of riff-raff. This one's a fully signed one. So but we'll come back to us in just a sec, because Blakey's got the last wrap-up to thank us all for here.
Welcome back to Locker Room. I too would like to thank us for here and for there. We will see you next week. That'll be JFOT and Dougie Hodgson. We'd like to thank our super special guest, John Markovski, for joining us tonight. See you for our last show last week. There will be tears.